From mastering the art of saving to harnessing the power of investments, we cover it all. But it's not just about the money. It's about cultivating a millionaire mindset that propels you towards success in every aspect of your life. Join our community of ambitious go-getters and discover the secrets to becoming a millionaire by morning. Subscribe now to Millionaire by Morning on your favorite podcast platform. And let's make your financial dreams a reality. Millionaire by Morning, where money mindset, motivation, and mastery meet. Subscribe today and unlock your path to prosperity.
Hello. Welcome back, you guys, to the Millionaire by Morning podcast. We have a guest with us today. Very excited about speaking with the demythification, defining what leaders really are. We are taught that leaders are born that way. We're going to speak with somebody today with over 30 years of leadership experience. Jim Carlough is an accomplished business strategist, speaker, and author, having successfully driven explosive growth for healthcare organizations from startups to industry leaders. Jim is a trusted expert in building high performing teams, revitalizing underperforming businesses, and guiding organizations through transformational change. Jim's core philosophy: leaders are not born, they are developed, challenges the myth of innate leadership. In his best selling book, The Six Pillars of Effective Leadership, a roadmap to success, Jim delivers a practical and inspiring guide for leaders at every stage of their journey. His approach focuses on six essential traits that empower individuals to embrace leadership as a skill that can be learned, honed, and mastered through experience, mentorship, and intentional growth. And I agree with this guy. Jim, welcome to the Millionaire by Morning podcast.
I am so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this, and I kept thinking it was the other day, and I said, "Oh, no, I hope I didn't miss it." But yes, I'm glad to be here. We're going to have a good time today.
We sure are, man. This is going to be such an amazing conversation. Like I said, off top, I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with what your book says, and you are an author. Um, you are a person who has studied these things. So, with me just being in agreement with you does not amount to anything. But at the same moment in time, let's jump into why you even agree with these things. But what I would like to do, Jim, before we get into it, as we always do on this show, is start from the beginning. I would like to start from when you began to be an entrepreneur. What led you up to that point?
So it's a very interesting journey. I have been in healthcare my entire professional career. From the time I exited college or graduated college in 1983, I worked initially for the first 15, 18 years for the insurance companies themselves, the health insurance companies. And then in the late 90s, I converted over to the technology side of healthcare. What's also interesting about my background is I have experience working on both the payer or insurance company side as well as the provider side of healthcare. And that's not typically common in the industry. but I have had a terrific run. I have had many great leaders, and my leadership journey and my first and most important pillar, which is integrity, I learned the same year I graduated college. Now, that year, I ran for local public office in the small town I grew up in New Jersey, and I won. And a couple days after the election, the city manager asked me to come in and visit with him. And I wasn't even sworn in yet. January 1 would be the swearing in date. And I walked in and we sat down, we started chatting. And he gave me my first life lesson, and that was on integrity. And what he said to me was, I'd like you to do me a favor from this point forward. Every night when you put your head on the pillow and right before you close your eyes, I want you to ask yourself one question. Did I do anything today for my own personal self benefit that was at the expense of another individual, group of individuals, or organization? He went on to say, if you answer yes to that question, you need to immediately do two things. Number one, figure out how to unwind what you did. And number two, figure out how to never do it again. I have led my life by that principle, and I ask myself that question every night, and I have never said yes to that question.
Oh, wow. So I want to know, what is the correct answer to that question?
The correct answer to that question is no. Integrity is so important and it's so lacking today in corporate America, in politics, and everything around us. And it's not just here in this country, it's around the world. We've gotten away from being transparent. We've gotten away from being true to ourselves. We've gotten away from leading with integrity and going down that center line. I call it the center line of the road. You wouldn't drive down the center line of the road, but to me, it's never wavering from those principles. And there have been times in my career where I've been faced with a situation where someone was taking a path that I totally didn't agree with, and it was either ethically or morally wrong for what they were going to do, and I stood up to that. And I think that we need more of that in this world. I also think it's very important to be able to build trust with your teams. You have to lead with integrity. Nobody's going to trust you if they don't believe you, and if they don't believe in you and or the path that you're taking them down. So when I think of the center pillar, when I think of the pillars, if you think of a monument that's like the Lincoln Memorial that has pillars in front of it, or the Jefferson Memorial, I think of the integrity one, the center one, that is holding up the point of the roof and holding up the most weight of all of the other columns. Because without that center pillar, that building just comes down. And that's what happens to companies today.
Right. That's right, man. I guess, where did you, where did you first get your education? Where did you first begin learning um, just about the business and the companies and about how they operate and what, giving us a little background, you know, where did you begin in your earlier career?
In my early career, I started off in the sales and marketing area in the health insurance business. And I worked for the large carriers. Initially, I worked for the Travelers Insurance Company, which today they're no longer in healthcare. They actually spun their healthcare business off in 1994, and I was part of the spinoff team that helped created the new company. That company evolved and is now called United Healthcare, and is the largest insurer in the world, or in America. But they do have um, plans outside of the United States as well. And so I rolled up my sleeves and I got part of a growing organization and continued to. At the time, I was single, so it was easy to move me around. So I got known as the rebuilder, and I would go from market to market and would replace management staff and get the offices retooled to be ready for the future. And I did that for a few years until I got a permanent role. Well, that was a permanent role. It's just that I had to keep moving. And then I got into segments of the business. Initially, small group business for small employers, then large group business, etc. And eventually held a regional position where I was responsible for 20 states for the small group business. And my career just continued to grow from there. And then in the late 90s, I had the opportunity to get onto the technology side, and I did. And I ended up working for Perot Systems for a number of years. And every morning at 6:30, I could look out my window, and across the atrium was Mr. Perot looking down from his office because ours were the only two offices with lights on.
So I'm going to assume, are you referring to Ross Perot?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the only reason I say that because I just remember Ross Perot, being in Texas. So what I would like to ask you is you came up with a philosophy. And your philosophy was leaders aren't born, they're developed. So where was it that, or when in this time did you come up with this philosophy?
So I never accepted the philosophy because if leaders were truly born, then I have no business being in leadership. My dad was a carpenter, his dad was a mason, and my great grandfather was a chicken farmer. There's no C suite in any of those positions. So when I got out of college and I started to get into business, I realized that there were things that I needed to learn and do. And that's when the philosophy started to shape. But when it really came to fruition was about 25 years ago when I was working for a company that had a mentorship program. And they asked all of their senior leaders, I was one of them, to mentor, I'm not going to say younger, but people with less experience in the organization in a very formal way. And a couple of years ago, when I started thinking about retirement, I'm not one that can go fishing every day. I just can't do that. I have to be, my brain has to be active. I have to do things. So I said, what could I give back to people that can live beyond when I leave this earth? And it was everything that I've learned about leadership and the principles. So what I did is I went back and I went through and made a list of every person I mentored over 25 years and the characteristics that they were missing when they came to me. And the list was about 18 items, but the top 6 are what are in the book.
Okay.
And they were the most common things, but they are also some of the hardest things to learn because they don't teach you these in school. So, for example, the next 2 pillars after integrity are compassion and empathy. You have to live those experiences and know and develop a way to respond and react to those. That is not something that you can pick up a book and say, read these 10 pages or 10 chapters, and you will understand everything there is to know about compassion. Because every situation is different. And a textbook can't teach you every situation. And so my 6 pillars are all related to the human side of managing, which is what school doesn't teach you and what your management team doesn't teach you. Because what we do here in the United States and around the world, when we have an open position for a manager, we take our best technical person in that department and we make them a manager, but we don't give them a roadmap to follow. And they struggle and they don't know how to manage people. They don't know how to handle them. Last week, they were eating lunch with them every day. Now they're their manager. Can I still do that? Sure you can, but the conversation's a little bit different now. And so it's these 6 pillars that learning them will create loyalty within the team, will create a following, and you become the leader that everybody else wants to be.
Awesome.
And because I take my job seriously, and I think my job now moving forward is to educate the next level of leadership. And it doesn't matter what age.
I want to stop you there and ask you this question because you just left off with something. It doesn't matter what age. And you kind of mentioned customer service, empathy. Well, you didn't necessarily mention customer service, but these things go into customer service, right? Good customer service. And, they used to say the customer is always right, or there's, empathy, and you abide by how the customer feel. But now there was a certain generation that felt that way. There's a younger generation moving into leadership now that does not feel that way at all.
That is correct.
How do we merge the two? How do we get those two to agree? And the leaders, the leaders that are the older leaders, who you are teaching these aspects to, and then you have a new group of leaders who are going to replace them. What does that look like?
So what I see happening starting next month, I'm rolling out a corporate program where I can go into a company and teach the foundation or the framework that I've put together to a group of people, and including to train their own HR department to do further trainings after that in these principles. And then, because it's really a culture shift. And once everybody starts to believe in the same level of transparency and showing compassion and showing empathy and being there for each other is so important. One of the things that I learned at Perot Systems was Mr. Perot took care of every single employee. If you had an employee who themselves or a family member was seriously ill, meaning spouse or child, we had to report it to his office, and we had to ensure that they were getting the best care possible. And if Mr. Perot felt the best care possible was to fly the people to Texas for the care, he would pay for it. I have never worked for a company that did stuff like that. And that that is a different type of leadership. But if you think about Ross Perot, he had a huge following. He had a huge list of loyal people that worked for him for years, first at EDS and then at Perot Systems. And they followed him because they believed in him. They knew he had their back, and that he would do anything for them. And I physically saw that in action.
That's awesome. I've heard so much about um, Ross and Ross Systems, and if I'm hearing correctly, what you're saying, Jim, is you have produced a framework that teaches these same type of it gives you the same type of quality of being a leader. It gives you the same architect leadership architectural structure of being a leader as these system does, and you would like to take that into these other systems and show them how to do this. Am I correct?
Correct. And somebody once called it, I'm the leadership. Um, how did you say it now? The leadership identity architect,
Okay.
because these people in leadership lack the identity of a leader because they've never been told how to lead or given permission to lead. Some people would call it imposter syndrome, where somebody's in a role or in a position that they don't believe that they should be in or can be in or whatever. But if you can master these six skills, you will not only have a dedicated team, you'll have a following, you'll also have the lowest attrition rates in the entire company.
Okay. So
The
awesome.
company I just left, the company I just left had between a 10 and 15% attrition rate, which is what the average is in the country. My attrition rate has always been under 5%.
Oh wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. So let me ask you. Let's get into some numbers. Let's get into some numbers, Jim. What are um on the marketing aspect, right? Not knowing how do you put yourself out there? How are you getting in front of these customers in you know clientele base? What type of clientele are you looking to get in front of? And the second part of that question is, what is your messaging to these clients?
So my messaging is that we have two problems in our world today. The first problem is we put a technical person in the role of leadership and we don't give them a roadmap to follow. That's the first thing. That causes us a much more serious problem, which is an attrition problem. So, the Society of Human Resources Management did a study recently, and they said that for every employee who quits, it costs between 100% and 300% of that person's salary and benefits to replace them. You've got down production time, you've got recruiting expense, you've got training expense getting the new person trained. So if you have a 500-person company and you have 10% attrition, that's 50 people that quit in a 12-month period. If the average salary and benefits is $100,000, that's $10 million that that company's throwing out the window because they're not developing leaders. And when the same organization did a ranking of why people leave their jobs, many of them are all related to leadership. The first one on the list, they lack a career path. So that tells me that their leader's not connected with them and talking about what do you want to do next year? What's the next job that you want to do? So we're not doing any career pathing in them. Second reason, and so that's leadership related. The second one is not leadership related, but it is company related, and that's salary and benefits. The third reason is security. We have to create environments that the employees feel psychologically safe in, and we don't today. We consider employees expendable pieces and that they can be easily replaced, not thinking about the cost of what it is to put through that. Some other things on the list is misalignment with management, lack of recognition, the work environment. Those are all related to the leadership. And we have to fix it. And so what I'm doing is trying to get out there. I've been speaking at conferences. I've been speaking at universities. I want to start going direct to companies and starting to build get these programs out there so that they can start to change the tide, so we can get back to where people work for a company for 20 or 30 years. That, our parents worked at one company, maybe two, in the course of their lifetime. You don't see that today.
Yeah, Jim. I think that's why I brought up the question. Um, man, I see where you're going with it. And at the same sense, I think that's why I brought up the question as far as the younger generation is because they think what is the norm is jumping from job to job, as opposed to Generation X and the boomers, in the sense that there there can't be any job growth as far as long lasting companies are concerned. Um, but then again, those long lasting companies gave those employees something to believe in, whether it was pensions, there's a lot of things that were taken away that these companies are just not giving anymore. So do you feel like it's also on the companies, the CEOs and those people to make sure that even with the leaders and the leadership being able to hold on and being able to manage and show the younger generation, do you think it's up to the CEOs and the owners and those people as leaders to give
Yeah,
these people a fair chance and a fair wage and, fair
a fair
pension and
wage
401ks?
and a pathway. When I do an employee review every year, there's two things that I ask the person about their goals for next year. What is it do you want to achieve at work? And tell me one goal that you have that has nothing to do with work that I can help you with. And a couple years ago, I had a woman on my team and she said, I would really like to get onto the board of a animal rescue organization. And she said, can I have that as a goal? I said, it's your goal. I just need to help I need to help you hit that goal. And we hit that goal. We created a plan. We created a list of agencies or firms that were within her geographic area where she lived that she could give back to, because that was something she wanted to do. And I believe it was my job as a leader to help her.
Love that, man. And I love that because the studies now show that the younger generation would rather, more so than make money, they would rather work for a job that allows them to have a social cause.
Yep.
Do you agree?
I think it's important to allow them to have a cause. I don't know that so I don't know that it has to be social, but it's something that they believe in that they can help with. Most of them are probably going to be social, but to me, an animal rescue I wouldn't consider social, and that's just my DNA, the way I'm wired. Even though I have a dog who acts like, my best friend and follows me around and sits right next to me when I'm at my desk all day, and doesn't bother me, just wants to be with me. But so I look at it a little bit differently, but they truly are part of the family.
Yeah. I don't, I have a, I have a stepson that I have a step. I say this to say, I say this to say, there's I commend everything that you're doing and about the leadership. And I guess I'm I'm questioning you on the fact of how do we marry these two based on like the boomers, Generation X, and then you got Z coming in, and or the millennials, and how do we all get along based on leadership principles? Because boomers, they're getting out of the workforce. Gen X, they have a certain type of skill set and respect that they want for the workplace. And then you have the millennials, then Gen Z, and they're all different,
Hmm.
right? It seems like they're all different, and some of them are social, some of them are for a cause, some of them are millennials, they are still trying to, or Gen X, still trying to get rich. So what are the principles based on the whole leadership architect of building a building that everyone can be inside of?
So I've learned in this last year since I published this book that it's a book for every audience, and it's a book that people. When I think of my life, I've lived my life by these six principles, and it gives me a framework. And I believe if you get the Gen Zers and XYZers or whoever they are, and mix them all together and start to talk about these things, I think we can motivate and create change throughout all of our organizations. And I'm just one person, but I've lived these, and I have people who have worked for me in the past that when they want to leave a job, I'm their first phone call. And they call me because they know they're going to get integrity. They know I'm going to have their back. They know I'm going to be looking after themselves and their families. And they know all of the things that, the way I handle myself. One of the pillars is stability. You don't want to work for a leader who, you know, acts like the building's on fire when something minor just happened, and they're, raving and screaming. And no, they want somebody who's stable, who on a good day and a bad day, you can't tell the difference. And you as the leader have to, you have to show up as a leader. Now, for me, I think it's my responsibility as the leader to be able to tell when you're having a bad day, whether it's because your head's a little down today, or you didn't smile when you said hello, or you usually pass my office in the morning and say hi, and you didn't today. And to know, hey, I didn't see Rashad today. I need to go check on him, see if everything's okay. That's the difference I'm talking about. And I think it's not only is it critical, but it is AI proof, because AI can't do any of those things. It can't show emotion. It can't tell when somebody's having it has to show compassion. Of all of the pillars, the only one it potentially could do is, one of my pillars is humor, and AI could probably write you a joke, but that's not necessarily what I use humor for. I use humor to get people organized, to kick off meetings, to kind of calm people down when they're getting not disruptive, but they're getting wrapped around the axle on an issue, to try to redirect them. And it's typically, and everybody's so hypersensitive. It's never, any of the humor that I state has nothing to do with anybody else in the room. It's usually self-deprecating humor of something stupid I did at one point in time that happens to be funny when you look back at it. And it is highly effective because it makes me, I become more human to the team. Jim just told us how he fell down a flight of stairs. You know, I don't think I would have told Jim I fell down a flight of stairs the other day, but Jim told us he did, and he even laughed about it. Right? You get a different opinion of me then. I'm human.
That's awesome. I mean, that is humor, a form of and a form of humiliation. And I say that in the aspect of a person kind of making fun of themselves, humiliating themselves, does in a sense cause respect for others. That saying, hey man, I went through that same thing and he's showing humiliation for himself.
Correct.
That is that is stagnant. That is something that leaders do. And I want to commend you, man. I want to say that you have definitely given us some insight into effective leadership, um, mastering integrity, focus, compassion, stability, empathy, and humor. I want to ask you, where can people find you? Where can they look for you if they, you know, want to follow you on the social media
So,
aspect?
yeah, I am on all. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I do Instagram. I don't do a lot of the other social media platforms just for a lack of time. I do have a website, which I'm sure will be in your show notes. And if you're looking at your screen, it's just jimcarlough.com, no space between Jim and Carlo. And we're going through a rewrite right now because I'm coming out with some course material in January where people can take the aspects of the book and expand upon it and learn even deeper and more things about how to be a better leader. And so I'm really excited about that. That's going to open up the world a little bit more to the messaging and hopefully keep me very very busy.
Hopefully, hopefully, and you have a book as well. Am I correct?
I have a book. I have a book.
Okay. And with your book, where can they find the book? Is it on Amazon or?
It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's on all of the top sites. You can also order it directly off my website. But I want to do something special today, Rashad.
All right, let's go.
So I'm gonna throw you a curveball.
All
So
right,
I want to give away 5 copies of this book, and I'll even autograph them.
all
So
right,
it'll
let's
be for
go.
the first 5 people who post a comment of what they took from today's episode, good or bad, agreement or disagreement, only because I want to hear the feedback of what people are hearing and thinking and sensing from the discussion. And I think you would want to see it too. So
Yeah.
you tell us where they should post their comment. And now, folks, do not put your address on social media. One of us will contact you directly through the platform that Rashad's going to mention, and we will then get your address that way. And I will be mailing 5 copies of this book out, one to each of the first 5 people who comment. How's that
All
sound,
right.
sir?
That's so awesome, man. That's so awesome. As we can see, and as we heard within this small amount of time, is that, well, without knowing his, too much of his background, without knowing, too much of his schooling or education, we can understand that Jim Carlough knows what he's talking about. So, what we want to do, and of course, I hope you respect my podcast enough that I bring people on who knows what they're talking about and are an expert in their respective field. So, for him to do this, um, this is awesome. We're going to leave all of his information in the show notes, and we want you to, whatever you like, whatever you did not like, just give us some feedback, and we'll be in touch with you. And we have 5 copies to give away. Jim, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. As a leadership architect, we always look for people who are on the same path, people who can teach and reach and let people know, our listeners, the world know, that you are someone who are within, deep within your spirit, deep within your outlook on life, that you are really trying to help others. Um, so thanks a lot for coming on today. And anyone listening, continue to make moves, make money, and make meaningful memories. And we'll talk to you next time.